Welcome back, Quasar Markets Live. So happy to have the man himself, Scott Bauer, the CEO of Prosper Trading, with us. Scott, how are you doing today?
It's all good, Howard. Looking forward to a little bit of a shortened week here, but we got some business to take care of before that happens. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Market's a little crazy here today. You and I were talking a little bit earlier about Bitcoin's taking a little pullback here. And you just said you went in a little long on MSTR and one that I'm long on also here, looking for another push back up here. You think we're going to make another move back up towards that 98 area?
I think so. The predominant order flow on the option side, whether you're looking at MSTR, IBIT, Mara, any of the crypto related stocks, is still really on the call side. Now, you would know better than anybody, on the coin side, on the token side, or on the futures side. But what I see on the options side is definitely bullish order flow.
Absolutely. We're seeing it on both sides. Sailor's not done buying. He's on TV every day. You had Pantera on this morning again, talking about it being
Panera,
very,
Pantera,
yeah,
something.
one of those two. Mentioning that it was, very early in the game. We're going to see, for me, the bigger play is the fact that at some point here in the next 2 weeks or so, the new administration is going to name what they're going to call a crypto czar, somebody that's going to be a liaison to the White House and amongst agencies to sort of coordinate their efforts on crypto. To me, that is going to be you know, an absolute boost to the market.
Good, and that's I'm glad that you feel that way because that kind of scares me a little bit, just in the sense that I don't want this to be a buy the rumor, sell the news type of event. There's been so much hype, obviously, priced into the market because of the new administration. So hopefully, this pullback that we're seeing now can hold, and any of the news that does come out is positive and bullish.
Yeah, I think the sell the news will be towards the inauguration. Is That's when, because nothing will happen in one day. Again, all the people who buy Bitcoin right now is saying, "Well, man, once that January 20th come, that's going straight to
Yep.
200,000, and it doesn't. They'll sell in a matter of seconds." What I wanted to ask you a little bit about is where I always rely on your expertise is when it comes to options. And I noticed, I actually heard on your show, you mentioned how IBIT is really being bought up by retail. It only has about an 18 to 20% institutional ownership. And then
Yep.
I had to do a little research and I realized now that most ETFs are normally 80% institutional. So is options, do you think these are institutions or are these really retail traders making these more sophisticated plays?
I do think it is retail for right now because the average order is very low. We're not seeing hundreds or even thousand lot orders coming
Right.
through. There's miscellaneous 3 lots, 8 lots, 12 lots, which definitely kind of lends itself to being the retail trader. And I also think that this is a brand new avenue for the retail trader.
Yeah.
Institutional investors, whether they've looked at Deribit or some of the other proxies, or in some of the other SPY Qs, IWM, some of the other ETFs, big players out there. This is really the first easy access for the retail trader to get a piece of the action here. So I think that's what we're seeing, and my guess would be as the product matures a little bit. We've been trading options been trading for just over a week or so.
Yeah.
We'll probably start to see more institutional paper coming in, but right now, a lot of retail paper.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I do wonder if, or will do you think institutional stays with CME futures? Your buddies over at CME. That's where that because that really was sort of the institutional place that you could see.
For
The
sure, for sure, and I think that's going to be a tough go. I think they're going to have to do something honestly on the option side. There are micro Bitcoin futures; those are very, very active.
right.
Um, that allows kind of the smaller guy, excuse me, retail guy to get in a little bit more. But on the institutional side, with all these other, no pun intended, options out here, I think CME is going to either have to make a change or come out with a new product.
Yeah, I would think so. I've been blown away by the volume, by the interest in it. I think there's a couple of parts at play there. Like you said, while it's retail, I do think there are a lot of Bitcoin maximalists that are looking at it and saying, these Mike Novogratz of the world, and not at an institutional level, but at a personal level, saying, hey, I'm going to get some downside protection or I'm going to use these options. You pointed out to me on some of the Bitcoin miners there's really some volume skews and some abnormalities. I'm not seeing that on IBIT though. It seems to be that seems to be holding pretty strong.
There is a little bit of a skew in IBIT. It's not as much as what we've seen in Mara and certainly MSTR. And that skew has come down a bit since last week, since we saw MSTR, really explode last week. So that has come down a little bit, but there is still a very, very significant upside call skew. And, going back to CME futures for a moment here, and when you say, that maybe people are looking at some hedges or something. When I look at the pure future right now, the Bitcoin futures at CME, these are live quotes, you've got about a $2,500 spread between the November future, which expires in 3 days, and the February future, which is 3 months from now. So the spot expiring in 3 days is just shy, just over 93,000, and the February is 96,000. That to me, if I'm a long-term holder of Bitcoin, that could also be a good way to hedge the position.
Right, absolutely. That's surprising. Those spreads had usually been pretty big on the future-looking futures for CME before options became available. Maybe that's playing into it also, like you said, some of those bigger Bitcoin holders moving their stuff into options. They're a lot easier to use, for some of us smaller players out there.
But I would tell you though, Howard, sticking with CME product on the smaller contract. So that is called the micro Bitcoin future, and the symbol for that is MBT, or some platforms maybe have to put backslash MBT or dollar MBT, whatever it is. That's the micro Bitcoin future. Man, the volume there is huge. There's already over 60,000 contracts today. Um, Up until a couple weeks ago, till there maybe a month ago, till the big explosion in Bitcoin, we were seeing average daily volume in the micro Bitcoin futures like 30,000 contracts or so. That's been over 100,000 now recently, and again today already now it's almost 65,000 contracts, and we're just an hour and a half into the trading day.
Well, you could speak to that, right? These are volatility chasers, is what we're seeing, at least to my mind. That are flocking to these. These, people aren't buying MSTR necessarily because they're bullish on Bitcoin. It's more about this play on volatility and these people that are just following volatility.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Also, so the position at MSTR that we took earlier, even though it was a bullish position, it was volatility neutral. So regardless of what happens to the implied vol, or whether it goes higher or whether it gets hit, which I think it will, our position, excuse me, is just directional
Okay.
based on stock moving higher or lower. What happens with volatility for our position is irrelevant. But yes, volatility is very and very expensive in
Yeah, I mean,
there.
it's and what's funny is I see the volume moving to these Bitcoin mining, um, stocks, especially Mara, as they've announced their Bitcoin strategy. I don't know if you saw they announced today they're the second largest corporate holder of Bitcoin now is
Yep,
MARA. So they're
crazy,
gonna.
isn't it?
What's that?
Crazy. And when I look at Mara today, while the other crypto related stocks are getting hit, and Mara was down a lot earlier, it actually ticked into the green just a little while ago. It's down a little bit right now, but boy, ever since they came out a week or so ago with that secondary,
Yeah.
which is normally a very, very bearish thing for a stock because they're issuing more stock, this thing is up, I think, 25%, maybe even a little bit
A
more
little
than
more than that, yeah. As you know, I've been in a couple because you've been advising me on which ones to buy. I'm still in a small part of
The
21.
21-25
Yeah.
expiring December 27th, right?
Yep, that is the one.
Yeah, we
So
still we still have a little smithereen of a position left in that as well.
yeah, I just think I just noticed it's one. I look at it two ways. That's one we're in where, hey, if it drops down a little bit, it actually becomes almost a bigger win for us because the sell will become,
Exactly.
will come out. So and that's something I never really looked at before. So I thank you for teaching me those type of things. Where this is one is it goes up, it's going to go up for us. If it goes down enough, it actually goes up for us. So you got to love that play there. But I've just been, you know, so worried about this market the last day here as it's an everything up market, and there seems to be that disconnect that we saw in the election still not hitting the markets where, we're hitting all
No,
times high.
listen, I talk about this on the major news networks all the time. You and I talk about it all the time. You got market all-time highs here. You've got still some animal spirits out there, and we've got a VIX at its lowest point in months. In
Right.
fact, looking right here, it almost hit a 13 handle today. It's trading down to 1409. Now that's the spot VIX. Go out a little bit in the future, whether it's
Right.
December future, January, whatever. It is going to be a little bit higher, but man, this is just a time to buy when you can and not when you have to. You want to buy some downside market protection here. Boy, I don't see how you can go wrong buying some upside fixed calls.
Absolutely. Steve brought that up and actually mentioned your name this morning, Big Beat, on our earlier show, saying that today is the type of day you don't want to be trying to buy that protection when you need it. You want to buy it when it's available, before it happens. You've always taught us that with the VIX when it hits these levels down 13, 14, that
Right. Especially in this environment. I mean, typically, end of the year, last, 6 weeks of the year or so, you do get a nice upward trajectory. Historically, you've got, the weekend, the week of Thanksgiving is typically an up week. Santa Claus rally, which believe in Santa Claus or not, there is historical data that suggests that the market does rise, towards the end of the month. So, and you do have lower volume. So, given all that, you would think, okay, maybe the VIX should be this low, but we've got so many things out there that
right.
the drop of a penny here can change the market here. So, my opinion, not going to get hurt buying some protection there.
Absolutely, it's always a good time to do it. Like you said, I'm not trying to time this market. It could go 5% more up pretty easy here. I could see it across, especially those indices that we've seen this move because people are bullish. I also wonder that if we see a reversal down next week as people get together, because I think there's a lot of what I was talking with Steve about earlier this morning is there's a lot of people saying, man, I might not be doing that great, but look at the NASDAQ, look at these stocks, the economy's great. And then when they get together over Thanksgiving, now Uncle Billy says, yeah, it's not so great for me. Inflation's hurting too. And, I wanted to buy a house and now I can't buy a house. And do we start to see that Main Street move into the markets here over the next couple of weeks?
Well, that's probably true. It also probably makes a difference how many beverages Uncle Billy has put back.
Yeah, without a doubt. My losses tend to go away the more drinks I have, and then only the wins come out, right?
But yeah, you're right. And, there's also listen, there's herd mentality out there
Yeah.
also. That's the animal spirits part of that. So when that starts to wane a little bit, yeah, we could definitely see a little bit of a sell off. And quite frankly, I think that would be very healthy for the markets before they potentially continue a Santa
Yeah.
Claus rally or move higher into the end of the year.
I'm with you. That's yesterday Steve was I get blamed when Bitcoin goes down around here I've noticed. So, he was complaining that it was going down and I was pointing out that this is nothing but healthy action. We need to get some support below us. Otherwise, you'll get that 20% downturn eventually.
Totally.
It's just, the same thing with MSTR pulling back, a nice 10% trading almost level for a day or two within a nice range makes me feel more comfortable as a technician trading off of those.
We always want to see, after volatile moves one way or the other, we always want to see some consolidation. We always want to see things calm down a little bit, because that does help us. That does then give us levels to look at. It does put in a base or a top, or gives you something to really trade off of. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a good.
I'll leave us with this, is what I'd have to say too, is based on with that herd mentality you mentioned. You really saw that in retailers yesterday, right?
Oh
BBWI
yeah.
has good earnings. All of a sudden, Nordstrom's, everything that was going into earnings today took off, and I had to catch myself and say, wait a second, just because one had good earnings doesn't mean they're all going to have good earnings. And what I also saw is I think we then start to set the expectation level even higher for the next earnings that comes out, and that's what we saw today, and we're seeing those reversals across it. So I do think the herd mentality is in play without a doubt.
Yeah, the one that really stuck out to me today in terms of the retailers was Abercrombie and Fitch, because they had really good numbers. But again, this is a market now, regardless of whether it's retailers or any sector, this is a market that you come out with a report, and you know what? People are focused on what the guidance is. What's
Yeah.
the next 3, 6, 9 months? And Abercrombie's guidance wasn't up to snuff. So even though their numbers were really good, that stock is down, six,
So,
seven
yeah,
percent today.
yeah, I'm with you. It's and we saw that on a lot of stocks where earnings, current results on EPS and top line revenue, which used to matter, so much to us that everything really traded on that. You've seen on most of them, it's the head fake. When the top line numbers
Yep.
come out, it moves one way, and then when the analyst call comes, it moves in the exact opposite direction as they look more for that forward guidance. I know
Totally.
you have a lot to do here, Scott, so I'm going to let you go. I thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving out there in Chicago.
Thank you, Howard. The very same to you and your family.
Thank you so much.